Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, February the 3rd. Yep, it's... Once again, I decided to record one more episode in the morning, and so that starts me slightly later with this stream, but I can't help but think that I kind of like that too. There's a big danger in it, certainly, and I shouldn't do it, but currently with my sleep schedule, it is working fairly well. So I finished Trine, which is what I think I was talking about last stream as far as what I was recording. Because before that, I had finished playing the Game of Life Spotlight, which was just like 2 episodes, because there's really nothing there to make a whole series out of that. Although Trine arguably has the exact same problem, where there are 16 levels in Trine, but the game is so built around like the release of NVIDIA physics and making a physics puzzle game, and it's just kind of lacking in what I would consider modern good puzzle design, or even great puzzle design for its own time. And so it's just kind of boring and repetitive, and the story is bad, and the narrator doesn't really help it any, and the characters aren't characterized well. So there's just really nothing pulling me forward other than the just general desire of wanting to be done with something. I guess we're playing Runecraft today. Let's see, Runecraft, there it is. Like, I really felt weird criticizing Trine Enhanced Edition, because there was just kind of nothing to say. It's like, alright, I'm platforming and doing some puzzles with some kind of unimpressive abilities between 3 different characters that you swap between. And that's pretty much it. Like, you're fighting the exact same skeletons all over throughout the entire game. There's only some bosses like that you fight that are just stronger versions of the skeletons, that really they don't have major differences in their attack patterns or their abilities. And there's probably only 5 of them in the 16 levels in total, as far as sub bosses and bosses. And then the final boss of the game is literally just climbing up a tower as fast as possible while the game trolls you and tries to block your way, and lava fills up from the bottom. Which, even in like the Shantae series, there was a level like that, and that was just really frustrating. And yeah, the Shantae, most recent Shantae game I covered, kind of does do a really good job of being a better experience than what Trine had to offer. And Shantae can transform and has different abilities. Yeah. So yeah, I was just like thoroughly unimpressed with the with the experience, and went through it, and I collected all of the experience jugs, which you had to collect all of them in the entire game to be able to upgrade everything to the maximum. So there was absolutely no point in the game in which you could have actually used all the abilities and felt overpowered. There's 26 items you collect that give you small but pretty much insignificant boosts. And they give you small but insignificant helpful attributes, but Like, even the one ability that lets you respawn if you die is not that useful, because only once after beating the entire game did I manage to kill all 3 characters, which caused a game over. But very rarely would I have run into that. The fact that there's like discrete loading sections between each level breaks up the gameplay when you could have easily, a modern game at least, could have had the entire game be loaded progressively throughout it, and each checkpoint could be a teleportation point in a larger open world type experience, even if it is still a 2D flat world. And then if you didn't have that mentality of that you were making an open world experience, there would have been more motivation to develop the levels so that you do go back and forth instead of just always going from the left to the right. But yeah, there's just a ton of more polishing, more level design and writing that should have been focused on, instead of giving us such a generic experience. It kind of feels like Nvidia may have paid them to use the new physics engine, which was probably new in 2008 when the original Trine came out. And so that was the only focus. It's kind of like a Super Meat Boy. Not Super Meat Boy, Sackboy, what is that? That game that PlayStation came out with, or Astro's Lab, I suppose, is the more newer one, so where it's a simplistic game showing off potential abilities of Nvidia physics more than actually showing a game. It has an Trine has an odd focus specifically on animating the background. When had the background been more duller and black, it would have made the foreground elements you are actually interacting with stand out more. But in general, there was just a lot of variety of background and foreground objects, which changed the appearance of the exact same kind of objects over and over again, where it probably would have been better had it just stayed consistent with some things. Or they could have also had a case where they would have animated the main characters better, and or just have more variety in the enemies. Like, I would have been much happier had they just skinned half of the skeletons to look like zombies. In fact, one of the thoughts that I did come up with while playing the game is that since the game is just so lacking in variety visually and storyline and thematically, since it's just such a dull game, maybe they could have gotten a little cutesy with it and played up the fact that they know that it isn't that good of a experience, and so instead they could have had it be more like The Princess Bride, where the story was being told not by a just male narrator, but by like a little girl who's obsessed with skeletons, and that's why there's only skeletons in there. Kind of like Tiny Tina's DLC in Borderlands 2. Behold the true form of this world. Like that would have been interesting, and it would have worked fairly well to kind of explain some things, although at the end of the day the game still would be boring and dull. I suppose it's an interesting comparison between playing the Game of Life, which I knew was boring and dull after the first game I played it, so I was really done after the first couple of games I played it, although I'm still trying off screen to get the final achievement just because I'm insane and trying to collect achievements. But I'm not really enjoying that. Like the achievement that I still need to get is to have 5 children in the game of life, and to do that is pretty crazy. Let's see. I could get a 5 cost card. Could deal 5 to an enemy follower. Prophecy of Doom. Play a spell. Do this.
So sweet, you'll get cavities.
And then do this, I guess.
Honey glazed.
So yeah, I guess that's as much for the recap / accountability section. At a certain point, I guess at a certain point, maybe I should stop calling it the accountability section and just call it the recap section. Although, I kind of like calling it the accountability section. Being a YouTuber, it's pretty much impossible to be held to hold yourself accountable based on the standards of random people who comment on YouTube channels. So you're really only accountable to yourself usually, unless you're working for a bigger company. And holding yourself accountable to anything can often be a slippery slope of relaxed requirements. So there's a decent amount of news, but let's get through it naturally. The one thing I will mention directly is, because I don't think I have an article here, is the original voice actor of Sonic, which at a certain level that wouldn't have been like the character who played Sonic, the voice actor who played Sonic in like Sonic and Knuckles or Sonic 1, 2, and 3. Maybe there was some speech in like a Sonic CD game. So you're pretty much talking a voice actor who would have really established himself as the voice of Sonic in whatever the first Sonic cartoon was. Anyways, he's retired, which probably means absolutely nothing for anybody other than what I think is increasingly just a group of trolls pretending like they're Super Sonic fanboys or Sonic fanboys, versus a real collection of people that actually have a obsession with Sonic. Because honestly, the history of Sonic games has just been abysmal as far as their quality, and if someone is still sticking to Sonic as their go-to mascot, they are probably either a troll or obsessive in one way or the other. Anyways, we've got a game on Steam here that's all Asian things, but apparently that means my boss is weird. This is tagged as sexual content and nudity, but it's free to play, and then it's Japanese and says it's English, and then traditional Chinese. Let's see. The Japanese sound is excellent. Let's see. From the looks of the game, it seems like it's like a cell phone game where somebody is like stalking his coworkers and like potentially sexually harassing them. Which weird might in this case be getting mistranslated. There's also seemingly just some straight up manga in the game, so I wonder if this is really just somebody trying to sell a manga more than anything else. The word weird is hin in Japanese, or usually if you're going to call somebody weird, you would say hin, H-E-N, where the word hentai comes from. Of course, the Thai part of that implies a pervert, sexual deviant, weirdo. Whereas you might call somebody weird for some other reason and just call them a hin, or you might use a different word in Japanese that I'm not aware of. So that opens up a door in the translation where this word in Japanese, without being able to read any of this, I can't tell you if this says my boss is hin or my boss is hentai, or because those would mean different things translated in English, and from the looks of it, I think hentai would probably be the right thing, as he's taking upskirt shots of her. And there certainly is, probably not in this game, they're not going to handle it very well, but there's certainly an idea, at least around the idea of finding a coworker / boss's cell phone and then realizing that on that cell phone is a collection of inappropriate, creepy, stalkery photos of coworkers or yourself. But yeah, you in an adult game that leads to like that leads you down the path of them being slightly happy about it secretly and eventually dating the boss. And in the real world, that would be horrific realization and a blow to the ego of your coworker, or the person, and a huge violation and completely inappropriate. Like from the stalkee's perspective there, for the person who's been being stalked by the coworker, you then question, did you get that job legitimately, or did he just hire you because he had some kind of feelings after you? Does he care about you at all as a person and your skill and your quality of your work, or does it not matter at all? It devalues everything that establishes the ego of a person, to think that they potentially struggled and worked hard to get to their station in life, their position in a job, just to have that all crumbled down and instill what could be a life-lasting insecurity. And yeah, there's definitely the immediate effects of sexual harassment in the workplace, but there is longer term effects, certainly, of these kinds of violations and inappropriate actions. It's really important in a work situation to realize that this whole work situation is a very constructed, contrived, controlled scenario, and that's what it's supposed to be, and that's how it's been designed. People are there to work. People are there to respect to each other, have a pleasant co-worker demeanor, and accomplish the one goal of making themselves, and more importantly, the company, money. They are not there to date. They are not there to sit on the computer and play Reddit. They are not there to read Reddit or play video games, unless their job is a video game job that involves that. Like, people are not there to look at porn on work computers, or flirt with the other employees, or raid the company fridge for as much as they can take. Now, on the other hand, a lot of jobs abuse their employees so much and try to force them to work so hard and not support their employees so much, then I can't really blame some people for taking advantage of companies. But there's a certain point where taking advantage of a company is very, very different from taking advantage of a coworker. And inherently, you can also make the argument that if a job is forcing you into like forced overtime and you're working 40 to 60 hours a week, you don't at that point have probably the time, or if the job is so underpaying you, you might not have the money to go out to a bar, which would be the socially acceptable type place to go and date and find somebody to socially interact with. So yeah, when companies start sucking all of the life out of an adult, a company can't really be held completely blameless that somebody starts integrating more and more of their outside of work life into work. You see that with people sleeping at work and like doing non-business things on the computers, or taking longer breaks for lunch. So yeah, both sides need to really learn to do a much better job of respecting each other's side's time. If a business did a better job, if most businesses did a better job of respecting employees' time and their life outside of work, I think a lot of employees would eventually learn and get the message to not then try to multitask. Yeah, that's quite the rant though, and doesn't have much to do with video games, so let's move on. Although, actually, there's been a lot of cases in the video game world where big top CEOs have certainly tried to turn video game companies into frat houses because they just can't maintain that division. Here we have a game that's all in Asian characters. It looks like it's a kind of RPG cell phone game, Chinese game, probably free to play, third party account, and third party EULA. Yep. Pretty much more of the same. We've seen it before. Okay. Well, my runecraft deck is just not working. Let's hit that. And then hit that.
This bears further study.
And then evolve this.
This match is mine. That voice. I hear the war of the world.
Go ahead and hit that one too. OpenCritic has the PlayStation Now's February lineup has been revealed. Man, what is with OpenCritic's pages now, though? They just don't want to load. Oh, let's see. Like, if I turn off all the cosmetic blocking,
This match is mine.
it still doesn't want to let me scroll down.
Oh my gosh, so many crystals.
And if I zoom into 100%, it still doesn't want to let me scroll down. There's some kind of ad blocking that yeah, something has really started happening with OpenCritic, where I guess at this point, like, I may just have to stop following OpenCritic if all I can point to is the titles. They've done something to their website that's seemingly just terrible.
Darkness on this plane.
Like, even when I have all the ad blocking turned off and you just have a ridiculous amount of ads all over the place, it's still not letting me scroll down any further.
Wait, how did I lose?
Yeah. So, yeah, as much as I can turn off ad blocking without going into my router and turning off the lighter ad blocking. Like, the only thing I can actually do to get it to work is to just zoom out. Zoom out a ridiculous amount. Which that does make me just assume that what the case here is they've programmed their website to work in a very terrible way. Alright, well, that's pointless. I guess I'll just stop following OpenCritic, which last thing I need to do is lose a source for news, but that sucks. Moving on, let's hurry up here. Like, I want to actually start playing Danganronpa and try and, yeah, I mean, it's once again moving to a visual novel, and as much as I hate pretty much every visual novel to a certain extent, I'm not enjoying them greatly every time I play one. Which I've only really played the nonary games so far. I still want to play Danganronpa and finish that story before Game Grumps gets to the end, because I can't stop myself from watching their episodes and spoiling myself on it. And then it would take like 5 years before I could get around to potentially forgetting the events of it, and probably not even then. Okay, let's go ahead and play this first. Gametsu has an article here. Needy girl overdose has been delayed to the end of spring with the latest details. I feel like I've kind of heard about this game, but not a ton. Seems like it's a desktop simulator of some sort, where you're going to be like chatting with people and probably doing like a visual novel type experience about one or two. This might be the same girl in just different hairstyles. These are like YouTubers, celebrity YouTubers. Alright. Let's go ahead and play that, I guess. Do that. This is a unique art style, certainly, but it's a little pixely, so I would probably have a problem with the resolution of some of these images, not particularly the art style of some of these images, where if you were to make a 1080p version of this and the lines were a bit smoother, I wouldn't really complain about the solid colors and the basic dithering that to make it look older. And see, even like this dithering where it's squares and checker patterns between black and white, that'd be fine at a higher resolution. I feel like this is a great example of what not to do if you're making your game look old when it's new. Is don't actually stick to the old resolutions, just make it feel somewhat like you're sticking to the old resolutions. Also, you could also make the same argument here, like, don't stick to having only 256 colors. You can make a palette of 256 colors that are more varied, or just let the pre-built software that you're animating in use more than a palette of potentially less than 256 or 256 colors. So you probably want to both have some dithering and have some more colors. Okay, rush, spell boost, magic missile. I guess we'll do this. And then this. Spell boost the cards in my hands twice. There's only one card in my hand that even can be spell boosted, so that's not worth it. Next we have a Gematsu article, Sachi Bato, President, it's time for battle. Maju Wars demo is now available. I haven't heard of this game before. Do we have a bit of a trailer? So many of these either come down to being a visual novel or an RPG. Yep, this looks like it might be more of a targeted towards cell phone JRPG games. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more and more JRPGs targeted towards cell phone level of 3D models and graphics. It's a tile placement game, and I just don't think those are my types of games. There's nothing terrible here. If anything, I kind of think there's something to be applauded for the art style here of the characters, because you have the two main characters and they're almost fully clothed in the sense that almost all the skin is covered. You got some shoulders here and that's it, and then you have a wizard over here with some big busts and cleavage, but not really that big, and then maybe she's got thong underwear that they're hiding here. But then you've got also just a girl with a short skirt, and that's about it. So, if anything, I would say by Japanese standards, this might be a very kid-friendly and kid-focused game. Let's do that. Which, by Western standards, that still may be not kid-friendly enough. But it definitely does kind of have almost a Pokemon-esque feel with these two characters in particular. If you cropped this image and put this on a Nintendo Switch cover, like, I would think, oh, this is definitely a kid-friendly Pokemon-style game. I think we already talked about this. Netflix and Legendary to expand Skull Island and Tomb Raider universes with a new anime series. They've also said, and we have this article, that the Lara Croft 2 timelines are somehow going to be merged, which I'm not exactly sure what happened at the end of the third game in the reboot trilogy of Tomb Raider, but I thought it was basically they were triggering the end of the world. So I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know how you bring the Lara Croft from the reboot series to become the Lara Croft of the old games, because the thing that establishes, I think in my mind, Lara Croft more than anything is the hot pants and the big cleavage and the green t-shirt and the dual guns. So when they made the reboot series, they very specifically and intentionally said that those elements were not going to be in the reboot. So the Lara Croft doesn't have probably as big of a cleavage as she did in the old games. So unless you're going to make Lara Croft the first character in video games to openly get breast augmentation surgery, which might be an interesting idea. Certainly, is to say, uh, just start the game with some guy saying, "I see you've had some work done, Laura," and she goes, "Yeah, thanks for noticing. Yeah, it cost me a lot. I don't know how you get her to be that. You can easily put Laura Croft in a green T-shirt, tank top, and the hot pants. But does that feel true to the character of the reboot series? Maybe, maybe not. Then, as far as the attitude, you could easily merge something in between the two timelines there. But then you have to also address the bigger issue in that each of the
How did I lose?
early Tomb Raider games had you fighting giant dinosaurs and shooting animals and much more than shooting people. So I don't know how you get to that point without PETA complaining quite a lot. So yeah, as someone who hasn't played the old Tomb Raider games, I own them. They're just kind of hard to play because they just don't run well, and they're very, very old games. I don't feel like there is really a lot to Lara Croft, the old Lara Croft, that can be brought to the new Lara Croft timeline that hasn't already been brought to the new Lara Croft timeline. I don't know how you make a remake of the first game, which is probably what they're thinking of doing, and still have the reboot Lara Croft. And honestly, I'm not sure that people like the reboot of the new Lara Croft any better than they liked the old Lara Croft, which I think they did like the old Lara Croft, or at least maybe she was just promoted and pushed a lot more. Advertising has changed quite a bit since those days. And so yeah, we are being put in a weird situation where a new Indiana Jones game has been promised. A new Lara Croft game is effectively being promised. If they're saying the timelines are gonna merge, they're bringing out an anime, which I feel like the Lara Croft anime, unless Netflix works really, really hard, is going to have Lara Croft drawn in a more mature, sexualized manner, doing more of the old Lara Croft type stuff. So, at best, we could make an assumption here that instead of merging the timelines, what they're really doing is they're saying they're abandoning the new trilogy, which, yeah, that felt like that was going to be the case after that trilogy had happened. Like, I didn't think, even when the first reboot game came out, I didn't think that this was how Lara Croft was always going to be. There's just too many other games out there. It's like 11 Lara Croft games out there with remakes, if you count all the remakes and re-releases.
So sweet, he'll get cavities.
So the idea that a trilogy could replace the previous 11, it was never really believable. Anyways, moving on, Nintendo Switch multiplayer upgrade first spotted in a Monster Hunter demo, so apparently the multiplayer could be improving. Currently, Nintendo uses something called NEX, which probably stands for something like Nintendo Experience for its backend, which is a pretty old system. It is based on source code licensed from Ubisoft and has been in operation since 2010 for the Wii U, 3DS, and Nintendo Switch. So, apparently there's some new system and it doesn't apparently have a name at the moment. But yeah, that is, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if it's some form of Microsoft code, really, because Microsoft has been pretty friendly with Nintendo, and Microsoft probably does, between the different companies they've purchased, have a decent amount of net code that they could share as far as their back-end matchmaking, peer-to-peer connections for games that don't have dedicated servers, which I wouldn't be surprised if there are a decent amount of games on the Switch in particular that don't have dedicated servers. Okay. Destroy an enemy follower. Banish cards. Deal 3 damage. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article here. Valve is on the hook for $4 million over a Steam controller patent infringement. So, apparently, Ironberg Inventions owned a patent that Valve apparently willfully infringed upon, according to a jury. Which might explain why the Steam controller is not very much on sale anymore. Steam controller was kind of a failure of a controller anyways, and I don't think Valve would actually ever bother to make a handheld controller now that doesn't split in the middle and work in VR also. And this might be very much a case where Valve either figured they weren't going to have to pay anything or didn't care if they ended up paying $4 million. Or it could also be a case of there just not being a mature person in charge of making decisions at some level. At a specific level, I would say, though, there's a problem with patents in controller interfaces in general, because nobody should own a patent on anything that is on the Steam controller, frankly. It doesn't help society and consumers to say you can't put touchpads on a controller, and you can't have a plus layout of buttons, or you can't have a menu button or a back button or start button or an analog stick, or you can't have controllers with 2 grips or triggers or right bumps. It doesn't help anybody to be able to have a patent for any of those designs. There's a huge gap in my mind between the old days in which somebody might invent a better engine and make a patent on that and have spent years designing this engine and actually deserve to benefit from their efforts, and where we've gotten now, which, in all fairness, the patent system frankly was corrupted almost instantaneously, because its goal is to try and create fairness in an unfair world. But yeah, very quickly, companies and people were flooding the patent offices with patents over and over again, with every little variation and every different thing they can think of. One of the things that I think mostly ruined the patent office and corrupted it was once they were told that they didn't any longer require a working model. You used to have to create a working model, not a full scale, but but or maybe sometimes a full scale version of whatever you were patenting, and you had to give that working model to the patent office. That way people couldn't just think up ideas without ever actually having to build it. But the whole idea of having to fight and defend your patents with lots of lawyers and money ruins the idea of fairness under the patent system anyways. And once you start having things designed with computer generated software and all it really takes is an hour and an idea, and the idea doesn't even have to be that good, there's really very little requirement for patents to be specific or for them to show that they're actually using it in any kind of business. All they have to do is defend a patent, unlike a trademark, where I believe trademarks you do have to show that you're actually actively doing business with that trademark. Well, arguably, I would say trademarks also have big problems around their ideas, too. The easiest thing to do, in my opinion, and the thing that should have happened a long time ago, is the idea of making only specific categories patentable, instead of having very, very wide categories of things patentable. And as we get into more technological and new concepts, there almost should probably be a moratorium on a new category for the first 5 years or longer, where if somebody invented quantum circuitry, quantum computing today, there should potentially be a moratorium for the sake of society and development to say nobody can enforce a patent or get a patent on quantum computing or quantum circuitry for 5 years, or maybe never, because maybe new technologies just don't need patents because they're so much more complicated than the development of a new gear or a new clock mechanism. Let's see if there's anything more in this article to mention. Specifically, the Steam controller included a pair of buttons along its back that could let players press with their fingers resting on the controller grips. Other controllers have licensed and included that functionality, but the jury found that Valve used the concept for its Steam controller without going through the proper channels. So every controller that has buttons on the back you can press with the grips are paying a license. And I guess that would explain why the Xbox Pro Elite controller has that functionality, or it has something very different in the way that functionality is implemented, and the Xbox One controllers and the 360 controllers don't have that. And I assume they mean buttons with your four fingers and middle fingers and pinky and ring fingers. The buttons right on the edge of the grips, not the triggers and the right bumps. If this is triggers and right bumps, then I guess everything is paying a patent for it. But I'd have to really question if everybody really is paying a patent for that, because there's a whole lot of Chinese controllers and portable wireless keyboards that you could get on Amazon that have right bumps and left bumps. Moving on, we have Remedy Entertainment has a job for a senior development manager in Espoo, Finland. Remedy Entertainment seemingly always listing jobs. Here's the Polygon article. Lara Croft's 2 timelines will be unified, says the Tomb Raider studio. No major game announcement with the next split Netflix Anime on Tap. It'd almost be interesting if what they did is they had alternate universes merge, and the Lara Croft and the events of Lara Croft originally do just overlap with the Lara Croft of the reboots. Although at a certain point, I don't know if the old Lara Croft would really want to have anything to do with the new Lara Croft. So, yeah. Like, here you can see this is what Lara Croft in the reboot looks like. And, like, I don't know how you get into that more British Lara Croft character from there. Particularly knowing the experiences of the Lara Croft in the reboot. There's a tweet, Apex Legends will launch on Nintendo Switch on March 9th. Chrome is updated, by the way, and now when you right click you can send QR codes of pages or QR codes of images and just create them immediately, which is nice. I don't think that's a plugin I installed out of the blue, or a plugin I installed a long time ago that's now just working, but questionable use. I do feel like, ooh, nice, a quick victory. QR codes are
That should do it.
cool, but they do tend to have a problem as far as actually being useful, in the sense that very few people are in a situation where they know that they can just point a camera to a QR code and it take you somewhere, take you to something, or give you some information that you're not getting easier some other way. Like, because you have to be basically stationary in front of the QR code. You can't just scan something on a billboard as you're moving down the road in a car. If it's on a sign, usually the sign has other information on it that could tell you just this link is going to take you to a website. So it's saving you a minimal amount of typing, or QR codes can have other information like contacts and things like that. But if you put a QR code on a business card, then you're pretty much handing them a business card anyways. Almost nobody does bother to scan them because they're not intriguing enough, and they're basically just advertisements, and the last thing anybody wants is more advertisements if you do see them out in the wild. Then you can set up Wi-Fi things with it, and that's probably the one scenario I can kind of endorse, is that I have seen plenty of waiting rooms that have a Wi-Fi login and password just printed on the on a picture frame, well, you know, on a piece of paper in a picture frame, but a QR code there would be slightly more useful. But also, usually if you're in a waiting room, there's enough old people that don't know what QR codes are, or just not technical people in general, that adding a QR code doesn't really help too many people.
Now this is a
QR codes for Wi-Fi make sense if you have a very long password too, and usually if you're giving guest access, you don't have a super long password, and you don't really need a password at all. I would say if you're making a guest Wi-Fi network, because that one should probably just be open anyways. Moving on, I need to focus on video game news today. Man, Detroit Become Human developer Quantic Dream is setting up a new studio in Montreal, which is interesting because Quantic Dream was in some trouble. Certainly here we can see Gamma Sutra mentioning it. Came under fire for fostering a toxic workplace environment, and the judge did judge against them in 2019, so I guess maybe they're thinking of putting that behind them, or I wouldn't be surprised one bit if this is them opening a new studio so that they could potentially shut down another studio. This might be a extremely corrupt way of them eliminating problem employees by just shutting down the whole office.
Is a work of art.
Which, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that is their real plan. They're also a French developer, so opening up a studio in Montreal, Canada, maintains a French-speaking area while not being under the French government's control. And let's be honest, France has not been the most stable country lately. It's not as bad as many other ones, but there's been a lot of riots and just turbulence, to say the least. Can we do something here? If I played this, I'd make a third amulet. And then that really wouldn't do much. I could play this, I could play this.
I go with the wind.
The earth rains from above.
This match is mine.
A second wind got to roam in
There we go.
Strike twice.
Moving on, Gematsu has an article. Certain Affinity is leading development on a new IP, a genre and style of game that it has always loved. The question is, what else have they worked on? They made the multiplayer elements for Halo and Call of Duty, so and they assisted in Halo Infinite, so I guess that means they're going to make a first-person shooter game. Okay. We want to draw cards. So how can we draw cards? Let's just do that, I guess.
The face of a chameleon.
What a squishy body you have.
Do we want to evolve and not be able to kill that? Or do we want to evolve here and kill that? I think that is our best move.
How you slither about. What a
That.
squishy body you have.
And then that. And then the turn. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. EA reports record net bookings as Apex Legends Ultimate Team exceeds their expectations. I don't think there's much more to read there. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called War at Sea, which looks like it's a submarine and plane game. $39.99 English only. That's too expensive to interest me. Although I could see people obsessed with the war being interested in that. Although I'm not sure how many people like that still exist. Alright. Okay.
Mana, come forth.
March it! Bow to my will!
Alright.
What a squishy
That.
body you
Earth
have.
and assault.
I'm getting that. So if I can just get 2 more damage, I can win. Tech Raptor has an article here. Steam VR and Oculus shows steady growth in adoption. And you can see even the
Give birth to a
new controllers for the Oculus, though, they do have a trigger here, and they do have buttons on the side where your thumbs are. So either they paid the patent for that one, or they're still infringing, or maybe there's something slightly different in the fact that it's not a two-hand controller. Okay. What can we do? Deal 4 to an enemy. Okay, if I do this. And then if I do 1.
Pawns, make your move!
Hmm.
Pawns, make your move! How can this be?
Earth and assault.
It's down to 7. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making this better or worse for me. Let's see. Here we have a game called Arrow Tennis, which Arrow, as in Arrow's God of Tennis. This is another one of those games from probably the exact same developer, where it's just a low effort tennis game, but in the background they are showing some side boob and maybe some nipple and then some butt and maybe some well, thigh, I guess is all that would be showing there. That's not an angle where you're gonna see much more. $5.99. This is bundled with Arrow Snooker. We also have Street Football, but Arrow Snooker was the game, and it's claiming the publisher and developer is the same name as the game. So the fact that Valve has not seen this and stopped this is ridiculous.
Watch closely, apprentices.
4 damage there. 1 damage to a follower. So when this activates
Here goes the workshop.
Strike, I guess it activates Strike only if it's evolved, and since it wasn't evolved, that doesn't work.
Wait, how did I lose?
That certainly is a bad omen for Valve, that they're dropping the ball again and potentially letting somebody lie about being a developer and make up fake names as a developer, make up fake names as a publisher, and sell low effort asset flip games that have a single image of some character that they very possibly didn't even properly license, and then put some images on top of that, screenshots, to make it seem like you're going to see a lot when you probably aren't going to see anything or much at all. Yeah, it's just rolling down back into the scum as far as low quality games.
Don't
moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article here. App on board has netted 20 million to support no-code mobile developer platform build box. The idea of no code is a ridiculous thought to me. Let's see. Allows you to design, build, publish 3D and 2D mobile games without coding using a variety of ready-made assets and accessible tools. Yeah, that's not going to make a good game, certainly. You're not going to be able to do anything good or unique or interesting without coding something. There's so many little tweaks. Even if you were mostly doing drag and drop game development, there's a whole bunch of little tweaks you'd want to be able to do, or you'll need to be able to do to make something look good. And it's the reason that so many RPG Maker games like this one here look so bad, is because they can't do the little tweaks, they can't do the polish, they can't do a simple thing like make these characters stand out from their background better. This game, Edifice of Friends for $2.99, English only, is definitely not making it to the follow list. Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article. Bloodborne 60 frames per second unofficial patch is dropping this month. Although, frankly, I don't know if you really need or want to go down that route as far as having an unofficial patch to just increase the frame rate of Bloodborne. Because I don't feel like Bloodborne played particularly badly anyways.
Into the future is only the beginning.
I think we talked about this at the end of the stream on Monday. Stadia is closing its internal game developers, which okay.
This is my fate after all.
But we shall see. Here we have another open critic that won't scroll down. Capcom playfully confirms that the Resident Evil Village tall lady is tall. I believe they said she was 9'4", which okay, that's pretty much just confirming what everyone figured out. And apparently Capcom is very happy that people are excited by her. Now, I would still make the argument that the depiction they've gone with her is very unique. They've made her giant, with which, relatively speaking, if she wasn't giant and she had the same size as the cleavage as these other vampire witches, she would be huge at that, right? But because they made her taller, even having a large cleavage is kind of ignored. They've put her in this long flowing dress to just accentuate how tall she is, but there's nothing particularly here that doesn't come off as a prim and proper Victorian lady in the dress. If you actually look at it, it is fairly conservative here, and is covering all the shoulders, all the sleeves, all the hands and fingers, covering a significant amount of her head and hair, covering all of her legs.
Leave me no choice.
I would argue, if anything, there's something kind of weird with how her dress hoops out, because this is like the widest point, and that almost in this screenshot makes it seem like those are her hips, whereas if you were to follow the hourglass shape, right about here would probably be her hips. So they're either implying she has a hooped skirt, a very small hoop skirt, or underskirt or something, or she has really thick thighs, or we might find, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a point where you like set her on fire and it burns off the bottom part of her dress and you see that she has like 3 segmented legs and there's just a whole nother leg there, or some other kind of monstrosity there that you're just not expecting, and that might be the big surprise. But yeah. I don't. I would say that they've been fairly kind of conservative as far as the way they've Capcom depicted it originally, and I feel like that probably has created a scenario where the way she's been mostly depicted, even by the rabid arrow artists out there who would try to draw her in a more sexualized nature, they really haven't done much with her. They've changed the camera angle, they've emphasized the cleavage, and they've gone with more of an anime style slightly, and that's it. Let's see. Of course, that's really just me saying the same thing I've been saying for a while, too, which kind of does also just indicate that until we actually see the game, like, I don't feel like there's much to say about the game. And this, okay, I fixed it. Okay, well, sorry, I'm getting distracted doing IT nerd stuff. I was using a plugin called, was it Minimize Scroll Bar, that minimizes the scroll bar, and for some reason it's just not working on this page. So, Open Critic pages in general now, so now I can scroll back and we can zoom in. Maybe not zoom in that much. Yeah, let's just leave it that much. Heck, let's see what happens if we go bigger. Nope, don't go bigger. Leave it at 80. So fortunately, Minimize Scroll Bar does have a exclusion pages, because obviously this has happened before for other websites. So I've fixed that, which that's good, because it's called Minimal Scroll Bar by iaarchiver.net for Chrome. Like that is a really nice thing, because without it you do have a very large scroll bar that you really don't need to. Although I also turned off the auto hide, which is not necessary. Next we have a game called Tap Tap Adventure on Steam. This is 99 cents, English and Russian. This looks like just kind of a low effort physics game. In a lot of ways, something like this is not too different from what Trine was. Trine was just more visually polished and probably a lot earlier to the party, in that it was a 2008 game. But yeah, this also is a little bit more like Angry Birds, and there was no real Angry Birds sections. In Trine. Yeah, I definitely am in a weird position with Trine, in that I don't own Trine 2. It's like $20. I'm not willing to pay $20 for Trine 2. Even if I do get Trine 2 and play it relatively quickly, so like in the next year, 6 months or so, then you have to deal with the fact that the next game is Trine 3, which goes into a 3D realm, and nobody liked that. And so then you have to kind of rush through this 3D game to get to Trine 4, which is the most recent one, which honestly, what this really is making an argument for is that I should have waited a lot longer before covering the Trine series until I could get all the games at a more reasonable price. Anyways, Tap Tap Adventure's not making it to the fall list. Tech Raptor is talking about this Project DT, saying it's basically Metal Gear and Nier Automata. Although, I don't know exactly what the Metal Gear part of that is. Like, I would assume that the Metal Gear series would have walking around robots a lot, but they are so visually unemphasized in any of the parts that I've seen of Metal Gear games, having not played any of them, that if you told me there actually were no mechs in the Metal Gear series at all, I would believe you. 4 damage. Kill something. Or this.
You've got the face of a chameleon.
Okay.
Everything all right here? Everything
I
all
don't know if that was the
here?
right move. In fact, I'm fairly certain that wasn't the right move. Gamma Sutra has an article here. iOS 14.5 update adds DualSense and Xbox Series X controller support, which is nice. I think we already kind of knew that, though. So they're just kind of confirming it or repeating it. There is, I think, similar support either being programmed into Android or is already in Android, and I believe the Raspberry Pi, too. Debian just managed for, like, after, like, 5 years of trying to get the Arduino IDE to run on Debian. I think either there was probably not a lot of people that were working on that, or there was a lot of underlying code that was not ported to Debian. Because that sounds pretty crazy. You would think if you're deep into programming embedded equipment, you might also use Linux and want a Debian-based version of Linux. That's a point where if it was a focus of Ubuntu in particular, they would have supported that a lot quicker. But since they didn't, they clearly didn't really care. Go ahead and play that. And evolve. Gamma Sutra has an article. EA signs off a multi-year license extension with the UEFA to continue the FIFA collaboration. Which is cool. That's cool and all. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a article here. Master the art of narrative design in Susan O'Connor's GDC Masterclass. Which, are they working with Masterclass, or are they just using that phrase? I bet they aren't working with Masterclass, because the Masterclass website was like really expensive classes to learn things from people who are really good at those things, or at least that's how it sold itself. I don't know how accurate that would. I imagine your mileage would vary greatly based on what you already know and what you expect to really happen. 3 damage to all enemies? Sure. Okay. And then 4 damage there. And then in the turn. See, Komatsu has an article here. A survival horror game, Expedition Zero, has been announced for PC. Do we have a bit of a trailer here? I think we've heard about this, but frankly, there's so many different games that are survival horror games that would be easy enough to be confused. Yep, seems like it's a snowy forest survival game, and I probably will not really pay it much heed. Tech Raptor has linked to the past the development timeline of the Ocarina of Time Part 1. I think we had already talked about that. So I've got some duplicates. But they now also have Part 2 out, so yeah, if you're interested in a retrospective from Tech Raptor, that's interesting. Here's the never implemented Nintendo 64 disk drive, which was the idea that they were going to have some games either in part have their data on disk drives or completely on disk drives. Since there was very little room and space on cartridges, and a lot of it was not writable in the first place, it was probably a good idea for them to not go in that direction, because that would have potentially kept them focused on supporting the Nintendo 64, which was kind of like the PlayStation 3 back in the day, where it was just like more awkward to program on code and hardware. So them moving over to the GameCube and then eventually moving to the Wii was the right move. You know, the concept of sticking to the consoles never really works, and upgrading to a newer hardware is always going to be the case. The better move, at least for a while. Like, we may in 1 or 2 more generations hit a point where there's less of a emphasis on stuff like that, and the consoles might just be so overpowered anyways. Okay.
This match is mine.
Wrongdoing? Me? Perish the thought.
There we go.
Got to roam in style.
Drown in light.
Might be able to win here. Next, we have a game on Steam called Luciform, which looks like it's just a platformer, not particularly visually polished. $8.99, English and a bunch of other languages. Yeah, it seems like you're this bunny that has to change colors to land on specific platforms.
Isn't love amazing?
I walked the edge.
I just don't see anything there of interest. Next, we have a game called A Western Drama, which they're calling a shoot 'em up, but it's an audio-only game, so then the question is the price here. $14.99 for an audio-only game is going to be really hard to sell. English, Italian, German, full audio on all of them, and in this case it better have full audio. You could really only play it with headphones, which wouldn't be a problem for me, but I don't know how the controller works. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, but this is almost certainly a game I couldn't cover. I've played a couple of other games for like blind people, and they're always interesting, but kind of impossible to put any real time into. As annoying as it may be, I think if you really are going to get into gaming, you probably are going to need a helper or a screen reader to have that work well.
A galaxy of gems tumbles and twirls.
Alright, well,
Drown.
that
But I
and
walked the
that.
edge. Best of luck to you. Lawful evil. Chaotic good.
And that. Yeah, and I just lost. That sucks when you spend so much time trying to win and you end up still losing, but whatever. One of the daily quests today is to play a private game, and I'll have to jump onto the Discord if I have any chance of playing a private game. Moving on, Tech Raptor has an article here. Void Arena aims to buck the trend of traditional RPGs, which I think we'd already talked about and covered this. I got like a bunch of duplicates. Oh, I suppose it is worth mentioning some of these duplicates might not be my fault. I think they all are, but if I can blame something else, I'll try it. Yeah, we saw this. This looks like a weird game. Didn't really interest me. While playing Trine Enhanced Edition, my computer did just full-on blue screen and reboot. Which, if that was Trine's fault, that's amazing, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen. But I kind of think it might have been Trine's fault. It's not like other things have happened with my new computer. Like, my new computer is run perfectly well. There is a new version of the overclocker, and maybe I'll run that. Although, frankly, why am I bothering to overclock my Ryzen CPU when it works perfectly fine, and I've yet to play any new games that even come close to overpowering it. That does seem... If anything, I should probably underclock it and cool down my room.
Human?
See. Next we have a game on Steam called Night and River Rager, which, alright, this looks like a spooky point and click adventure. I'm a sucker for point and click adventure. This is apparently a spin-off advertisement for My Beautiful Paper Smile, which I feel like that, yeah, that's early access. For $14.99, so well, that is a weird choice then, because now I have to decide, do I want to play a spin-off story that's free for games, or do I only want to criticize or play games that are really commercial products? I have played some free mods to things, but very lightly. Maybe I played a mod or installed some visual mod to the Talos Principle, and I've played like one mod to Portal 2, which was Portal Story Mel. But mostly I have stayed completely away from mods, because if they're free and you love the game, then try them yourself. If that costs money, then I probably just haven't gotten around to it. Or it's kind of hard to justify playing a mod that costs money versus just playing a real game. How can we do this? Play
Glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
Mana, come forth.
My crystal sword. I am beyond prophecy.
So, Tech Raptor has an article here. Mass Effect Legendary Edition release date has been announced. This is not surprising to me. I can't even really tell you who this is. I think this is kind of like the bad guy at the end of the entire trilogy that just explains almost everything to you. Or he's kind of like a side character. I definitely did not get very far into Mass Effect. And I frankly have to hear a lot of talk about major improvements to the Mass Effect Legendary Edition to convince me to commit that much time to it. And at a certain level, I feel like you are still just asking for trouble. Like, this is like being a Babylon 5 fan, frankly. As a Babylon 5 fan, let me tell you, like, getting hyped for the potential of a new Babylon 5 series or anything built in that universe has been always a horrible disappointment in the long run. There have been spin-off movies. There was a spin-off TV series called Crusade. There's been rumors a couple years ago that they were going to do something new. I saw just the last week that like about half of the main actors in the original Babylon 5 have died from different things. Mostly just, generically speaking, old age, I would assume. So if you were even going to do a Babylon 5 series, you would have to set it in a whole new generation, or do a soft or a hard reboot on it. And then
A glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
and that's just not going to satisfy people. Yeah. And the only thing that saves Mass Effect as a series to potentially not be that disappointment that I think it is right now is if they can get it back on track and have a really good fourth game in the non-Andromeda Mass Effect universe, and which would effectively be the fifth game in the series. It'd have to be really great, and it would have to carry that momentum, I think, into a second or third game that's really great. And if you can establish that much, you're accomplishing more than what the sci-fi Star Wars prequels were able to accomplish, and pretty much any other series. Like, maybe you could say that the Star Trek series has managed to have a decent amount of things, because they had the original 3 seasons of Star Trek, and then they had movies come out, and half those movies were good, which was just good enough to get to the next generation.
Golly, it's chilly here.
You don't stand a chance.
I have no plans to
This was the
adopt
only
flavor,
card
just have a sip.
that would have saved me,
Such a
and I
lovely
played it
couple.
too early.
I am beyond prophecy.
Shutting down.
See, Tech Raptor has a review here for a game called Lotus Reverie First Nexus, which is some kind of visual novel, which is interesting because it is introducing the idea of Tech Raptor having somebody on staff who would be willing to review visual novels. As a visual novel, this is a very soft pastel, like kind of like watercolor painted scenes. Also, in the 2 scenes we've seen so far, you have some pretty older characters drawn. They're not going for the Moe art style where the characters are younger, shorter looking, less human looking. There's not a lot of, there's like no cleavage, no skin showing, so it's pretty conservative. So they are starting definitely in one direction, which they then would have to certainly swing to the other direction, because you're going to run into a lot more visual novels with Moe characters, a lot more visual novels with lewd clothing and lewd screenshots and cheesecake imagery. Looks like there's some kind of stealth, maybe puzzle game here, maybe even a tower defense. Here they say, after trying the combat a couple of times, I turned it off and didn't look back. So there is some kind of combat element that you can just completely skip. And then you have your dialogue choices and your text. And they give it a 7.5, which is average. Which honestly, like, what could you really give the first visual novel you've reviewed for Tech Raptor? This is a chapter episodic game too, which that's kind of weird for a vision novel. The first chapter in this series doesn't exactly hit the ground running, but stumbles just long enough to find its footing, eventually recovering to tell a story with more than a little heart. Prose or engaging, unpredictable story, heartfelt, emotional writing, just enough player control to suck you in. Cons, slowest of the slow burns, and easy to ignore combat. And this is a new staff writer, as far as I can tell. I haven't seen her before. Rihanna Bevan, British journalist and University of Essex alumni, loving all things games. She spends most of her time writing and replaying Fallout New Vegas for the billionth time, which inherently, this is the problem with any mainstream journalist, is it's something I strive very hard to not become as a video game critic, is somebody who's just always comparing games to, for me it would be Portal. Like, I try not to compare every game to Portal or play Portal a whole bunch. And frankly, if you're replaying Fallout New Vegas, you're putting hundreds and hundreds of hours in that. May also hear drone on about video games on BBC radio and TV station. That's actually a pretty good get, though, for Tech Raptor to have somebody who works for the BBC. Now, working for the BBC doesn't inherently mean you're qualified or that you're even particularly that well known or popular. The BBC is kind of a weird TV radio production company, but and it's very, very big, but it's something. Like, saying you work for BBC, it sounds a lot better than you just have your own YouTube channel.
Don't underestimate me.
Time for me to prove myself.
Yeah. Speaking of radio, and this is an odd connection, but yeah, Jeff Gerstmann sometimes goes on the radio to talk about video games on top of Giant Bomb, being the guy in charge of Giant Bomb. Giant Bomb, in their podcast, or the Bombcast, is now running ads, which I don't think they were doing that before. So their new acquisition company is having them run ads, and that would be fine and all, except for they're running ads for Blue Chew, which is chewable Viagra, which that just really seemed like out of place. Like, it would be disingenuous to say that the Bombcast hasn't always been kind of an edgy, this is for an 18-year-old type podcast. That they've had cursing, fights. They maybe over the past 4 or 5 years have gotten more and more cursing as they've talked less and less about video games. But it does kind of feel like a jump from going from something that looks like it, that felt like it was for 18-year-olds, to something that is now selling Blue Chews, which, let's face it, Blue Chews are being sold to 25-year-olds as party drugs, and a lot more than they're being sold to people with ED in their 30s, 40s, or 50s. I seriously doubt there's anybody who's in their 50s or older listening to the Bombcast, and that are actually going to be advertised to buy Blue Chew online instead of getting a prescription from a doctor for Viagra. So yeah, that definitely was kind of shocking, you know. And yeah, sometimes you just have like relationships, whatever you would call that, like fandoms, that one day you wake up and go, wow, this has really changed. And that definitely is the case for Giant Bomb. It is completely 180 from what it was like 5-10 years ago. It's not even video game related, and more I'm not putting as much time to listen to it, but I've failed to pull the trigger and not listen to it at all. And mostly that's, I think, in part because of the pandemic, because if I if I had
Love how you slither
other
about
things
that
to do,
squishy body you have.
I would probably have more podcasts and different podcasts to listen to. But everybody's kind of slowed down, so they've made fewer podcasts, and I've definitely started to be very, very bored on some days where there's just nothing happening at all, or nothing of interest happening. Moving on, Gamma Switcher has an article here. Nintendo raises its fiscal forecast as the Switch closes in on 80 million lifetime sales. Well, we got one quick disconnect victory so far in nearly 2 hours. Let's go back home and see if we can switch over to unlimited and see if we can maybe get some better runecraft victories that way. Yeah, the Nintendo Switch is selling pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about getting a Switch, but
Don't underestimate me.
I guess if I think about what I just said about being bored and having more free time, buying a Switch and playing a few of the games might be something I could do to kill free time. Not that I could put any of the content on my YouTube channel, and that would certainly bite into playing video games when you're bored of playing other video games. There's no way to continue to make content. That's an easy way to burn out. But yeah, that is definitely on the table. And if the United States actually did ever implement some kind of even temporary universal basic income where they were giving stimulus checks consistently, then that is something I could easily justify. And it's not like there isn't a plethora of kids that would love a Switch if I got bored with it, that I could give it to. And I have only a small number of games I actually want to play. And Nintendo did say that at this time they're not planning on announcing any new hardware as far as the Switch, so you're fairly safe there. I think it will be. It'll probably be next year, next holiday season, if any new hardware comes out. Not summer this year or holiday Christmas this year. I think there's. I mean, if you just look at probably the slowdown of production in China, that would probably explain why you wouldn't see any of that.
Glitter, glitter, glitter. Sparkly stars.
Right. Moving on, Gemetsu has an article. The parkour adventure game Stride is coming to the PlayStation VR in early 2021. We are far too... well, we are in 2021, so... Like, we're far too late into early 2021 being in February for them to not have a specific date. And for a second there, I thought we were still in 2020 in Groundhog Day style. And I'm like, nope, actually, we're in 2021. Next, we have a game called Valheim, which is tagged as an open world crafting simulator. Why are these images not loaded? I don't have a justification for that. It's not like the suspender. I'm still somewhat working on my Wi-Fi, but I think it is just the Wi-Fi that's the problem. And I have been able to to pretty much avoid most disconnects. I've had like 2 over the course of 2 days, and then I've had some delays. I'm honestly not 100% sure that there isn't somebody just straight up trying to hack my Wi-Fi. With like a deauthentication attack. So my next step is I'm gonna try and increase the security a little bit more and see if that fixes things. Could also just be a bug. Anyways, this game, Valheim, it's rated very positively.
Please love me.
Screenshots still don't want to load. It's early access, it's $19.99. I guess I just have to put it on the follow list. 1 to 10 players. This is one of those games where it would come down to, does this game actually play well as a single player game? Is there an actual story here? Because what you're basically asking for is something like God of War on PC, because God of War is not on PC. And I'm not sure it can really deliver that.
I watch over the course of history for the sake of the future.
Let's see.
This match is mine. What? Impossible!
Let's keep on going. Gametsu has an article here. Street Fighter Champion Edition Winter Update live stream set for February 11th. Okay. Not really much to say there. Here we have a game on Steam called The World's Hardest 3D Game, which looks like a low effort 3D polygon asset flip. $2.69 English only. Nothing there.
Guns speak. You just gotta listen.
See, a 2D platform Dog World launches March 8th for PC and later in 2021 for Switch. Do we have a trailer? Is this a person with a gun on the back of a dog, or is it a 2-headed dog? Looks like it's a black and white, maybe run and gun shooter. I don't think this is particularly impressive. From the looks of it, it looks like the dog is on the back of the guy shooting the shotgun. Yeah, I am unimpressed by that.
Next, I shall sing your praises, caster.
Okay,
Full of opening.
hit that,
You can't make me give up.
and then do
You
that,
know what? This time, maybe.
I see
then
all.
hit that.
Misfortune approaches.
See, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Sony reports significant sales increase following the PlayStation 5 release, which I feel like this is one of those cases where the amount of dishonesty that can be spoken in shareholders meetings and fiscal reports has gotten to a ridiculous level, because from everything I've heard, the sales, particularly in Japan, of the PlayStation 5 have been very, very low. Maybe there's a misunderstanding here, and the PlayStation 5 has sold very, very well outside of the Japan, and just very, very poorly in Japan. That might be the case, and both things are true. I bet that is the case, actually, now that I think about it. But also, it is 100% status quo to lower expectations and then over deliver because you lowered the expectations earlier. which that's what they often do, is they have forecasts that go in that direction. We haven't talked about GameStop today as far as the Wall Street bets. At the moment, last I heard, it was pretty down. Like that, it is impressive to say the least that they got people to do a short squeeze and allegedly cost Melvin Capital $20 billion, I think was the number. But now I think people are getting out of the meme and selling and implementing exit strategies. I wouldn't be surprised if there were other companies that were profiting off of this too, and they were shorting GameStop when it was at its new peak of like $400. Inherently, this whole experience, I think, just confirms my belief that by the time it had gotten popular enough that people were talking about it and seeing it on Reddit, unless I was following Wall Street Bets and doing a very deep dive and in on the ground floor, had I or anybody, by the time I had seen it on Reddit, had I bought GameStop stock, it probably would have gone up a little bit, but I probably maybe double tripled my money, not expanded it greatly. And the truth of the matter is, most poor people and most average people in the United States just don't have the extra money to gamble. Like, even the $600 stimulus checks is like, yeah, you would have been pretty foolish to put $600 into GameStop on a gamble, unless you just didn't need that money. So yeah, I would not recommend day trading. I think it's way too dangerous, and GameStop is really down now, and I imagine what we will see is it will never probably not get shorted down to like $20 a share, which I think was its low, which was probably far too low for what it was really worth. But it probably will fall down to something like $60 a share, $50, even $40 a share. And yeah, it's not like GameStop took that new enthusiasm around any of that and was able to pivot and announce anything. They probably were told by their lawyers not to even mention it, for fear of the SEC coming after GameStop for market manipulation. Let's see. Moving on, we have a Gemetsu article, MLB The Show 21 Jackie Robinson editions announced, which is interesting. Jackie Robinson was a well-known baseball player. I recognize the name, and that's about all I can say. I feel like these editions are oddly the extra expensive editions, whereas the regular editions won't have an African American on the cover, and it will be kind of this weird, like, potential even test case or segregation experiment that they're doing, where they're gonna potentially try to sell the game to two different audiences. I don't know who really is playing baseball games these days or even cares about baseball these days. The Japanese probably are still somewhat interested in baseball, but are they interested in American baseball teams would be the question. The developer here was Sony Interactive San Diego Studio, so you could call this a bit SJWE, but I think in this case that's probably not accurate, because like it's not like they picked a obscure unknown character. The Jackie Robinson is well known. Like, you might make a good argument that there probably hasn't ever been a Babe Ruth edition, and there's probably some other baseball players that could be named that are lesser known that might have better stats than Jackie Robinson. Apparently, they're saying 3 editions starring the baseball legend. So, there's a digital deluxe edition also. And then even more. Yeah, but the whole thing still just kind of feels kind of pointless because of the baseball game itself. Alright, well, the biggest news is Embracer Group came out with some announcements, to say the least, and they've embraced a lot more. This is the parent company of THQ Nordic, so they've added Aspire Media and Easy Brain to their studio lineup. Let's see, Aspire Media apparently made Hexagon-based top-down games. And then they are merging with Easy Brain, which arguably who's getting acquired versus who is merging is some real confusion here, because I've seen some things being announced as mergers and some things being announced as acquisitions of studios, and I'm not sure if this isn't really a case of fake mergers happening. So the way the Tech Raptor puts it, Aspire has been acquired, Easy Brain is merging, which is Easy Brain is a mobile developer known for Sudoku and other puzzle games, which the mergement argument is. They've also acquired the Borderlands developer Gearbox, which is not super surprising, and this is bearing the lead by far, and we'll talk about it later. We've known for probably 4 years now, and some people inside of Gearbox have known for probably even longer than that Randy Pitchford has been trying to sell Gearbox as a sole proprietorship, or as the company he owns. That was the only way that you could even possibly get rid of Randy Pitchford, who is the problem there. I guess Jeff Bezos of Amazon also is stepping down as the CEO of Amazon, but I don't think that will probably affect video games in any way, because Amazon's attempts to get into video games has failed miserably. But yeah, we knew Randy Pitchford was trying to sell Gearbox, and they finally found somebody that could pay the massive amount of money they wanted. Let's see, the deal could potentially exceed $1 billion. An initial $363 million payout will be increased significantly if Gearbox can hit targets set by Embracer. Gearbox will continue to operate independently, so the only difference you're likely to see on the moment-to-moment basis is increased financial clout, which I could easily see Gearbox flushing that money down the toilet. They just shut down Battleborn, and that was like the prime biggest failure that they've had recently.
Time to head home.
And now that 2K is not the publisher per se of games made by Gearbox, it's very possible that Borderlands, which is owned by 2K, won't be made by Gearbox. Which I frankly think that was a possibility anyways, that Borderlands 4 was going to be handed to some other company just because of Randy Pitchford being so toxic. So then if Gearbox doesn't have Borderlands, basically Gearbox doesn't have anything. They have some people that can make first-person shooters, which is something that maybe Embracer Group was missing. But they've got to have an idea. They've got to have some new IP. It's got to catch people's attention. It's going to have to probably have a different gimmick and not go for the RPG elements and the bazillion of guns concept that Borderlands has. It's probably going to need some different feeling to it, and different writing and different characterization and different animation. And there's that high danger that the next Gearbox game is either Duke Nukem Forever 2, which would be awful, or a Call of Duty clone, or something that feels a lot like a Call of Duty clone. And I would imagine Embracer Group's goals, their payment goals, won't ever be reachable. So yeah, at this point, THQ Nordic is as big it feels as big as THQ ever was, and possibly even bigger now. And it's setting itself up to be something as big as EA or Ubisoft, or Activision Blizzard. And then the real question is, are they going to be able to do anything? It's not like Embracer Group has released anything that was amazingly great. Their big ticket game was supposed to be Darksiders 3, and Darksiders 3 was kind of buggy and not that interesting to people, and has now easily been forgotten to the point where I barely even remember that it's on my list to buy at some point and play. Need to hurry up. Gematsu has an article here. Narita Boy launches this spring for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This looks like a Tron reference. It's from Team 17. Well, Narita is a weird word. Might be something here, maybe not. It seems almost like it is the concept of Tron. Somebody gets stuck into an old game. And I feel like nostalgia for Tron is not anywhere as accurate as it should be, because very few people actually remember Tron or have watched Tron, and it's not that good of a movie. Moving on, Scarlet Hood and the Wicked Wood has been delayed to April 8th, which this was a game that was basically announced less than a month ago, if I recall correctly, and it's already being delayed. And this was one of the iffy ones where the art looked kind of interesting in screenshots, but the actual depiction of the game looked like it was kind of just a point and click adventure with some puzzles. And there's a lack of visual polish on that outfit. That is just like a weird looking outfit. But you could potentially go comedic with this weird looking outfit, but these characters don't look particularly well drawn either. And I don't think you can delay till April 8th to redraw everything. If you'd need a bigger delay than that.
You like the cold? You like the cold? You like the cold?
Let's see. Gematsu has an article here. Akiba's Trip, Hellbound, and Debriefed, Protagonist, and Suzo Morizumi trailers. So, I don't know why they really need to do trailers for a game that is just a remaster of a game that's already come out, but I guess because it wasn't released in the West, they want to just go down the standard path of advertising. You can definitely tell though that the graphics here are going to be a little bit low polygon, and this isn't a full-on remake. This is just a slight remaster and probably mostly a localization. One of the things I guess to mention also is that the third game in the Akiba series is Akiba's Beats, which loses the whole clothing stripping game mechanic and goes for more of a rhythm thing to kind of self-censor, which the poor kid doesn't have any nipples. The Akiba's Beat game then kind of violates the whole idea of the series in a nutshell. It's like, why would you want to play a game built around the idea of comedically stripping emotional vampires and take out the part that people are interested in, which was the stripping mechanic? I don't think there's enough of a story behind the Akiba series to sustain it if you don't have that gimmick. It's a game series built on a gimmick. You can't abandon the gimmick. It's in the same way you can't make a Senran Kagura game without lewd ninja girls and lewd poses. That's just not going to work. And you can't make a Halo game without guns. That would be insane. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Quiet Sleep, which, again, screenshots are not loading. 79 cents, English, Russian, mostly negative reviews already, so I don't even need the screenshots to load. I changed the quality of service, and maybe that affected this, but it really shouldn't have. Lego Gaming's YouTube channel has this kind of podcast called Bits and Bricks Episode 9, in which they interview TT Games, I think. Let's see. They speak to Ethan Vincent, one of the founders of TT Games. So that might be an interesting listen if you're interested in the Lego games. Although, arguably, it may not really matter. Lego is going in some kind of crazy ways in which they've made a whole like ASMR collection of videos, and now they've got this new app that they're promoting called Vid.io, which is apparently some kind of pre-printed images that the app can scan to play music, which this would be a nice evolution of what they were doing with Toys to Life and trying to integrate into Legos, because before it could just scan colors and that was it. So you make a whole collection. Let's go back and show this. So yeah, you select your beat bits, you put it on this stage, and then it scans all those images, and then it creates a character who's who's making videos. It's kind of an Instagram, I guess, for our kids. That's the general idea. All right.
This match is mine.
This is real. You like the cold?
Which, yeah, there's a thought there. More and more Lego is going to have to integrate with cell phone compatibility, but sometimes their attempts seem to fall flat, and it takes them 3 or 4 times to get to where they're slightly
How did I
going. They also have this Lego Ideas where you can make and share your first Lego micro game using Unity in Lego, which read all the info there. So yeah, that's more video game programming. And yeah, they are just more and more going to have to hit more and more interactivity with their games. Yeah, is there anything else Lego wise to talk about? Like they're really all over the place. They've got Lego clothing they sell, Lego sets they sell, licensed products they sell. At a certain level, it might very well be better if Lego just stuck to the plastic cubes. But they really can't do that. They've got to stick their fingers in every pie, particularly considering how Lego is probably one of the few toy companies left in the world. And let's not forget to mention the Mario tie-ins with Nintendo now. I can't help but feel like I'm rambling more than anything. So yeah, here's the build your own game concept. And I guess if you win, you get Mindstorm, a Lego Bowser's Castle, a Lego Mario Starter Kit, a license to Unity, I guess, and Unity Asset Store, credit, and the NES. Of all the Lego sets here, the only one I own is the NES, and it's the only one I really do want to own. Mindstorm's a little too young for me as far as programming software, and I don't want to get into Unity. Free Lego micro game from Unity is exactly what you need to get started. So you visit the Lego micro game dedicated page, and then let's see, publish your creation on the Unity platform. Build any game you like. Submit a trailer. Make poster screenshots of your game in your submission. Yeah, but you have to be 18 years older to do it, so kind of you drop the ball as far as the contest immediately, because you've got to have basically a parent make the game for you or fill out the forms for you. Yeah, that seems fairly silly. And this is pretty much Unity, so that they are actually trying to get you to learn Unity, which I have to really applaud that idea. So many other companies have tried to teach people Scratch programming, which is something Apple kind of created, which is just drag and drop programming. And there is some of that you can do in Unity, but that is not the main focus by any means. So yeah, real programming in a real engine like Unity actually will empower kids to actually learn how to program. It may overwhelm them a lot too, but it is establishing realistic goals using the industry standard software and establishing how hard programming can be, instead of giving participation trophies or implying that programming's so easy that anyone can do it. It's not easy. There's plenty of people that can't wrap their mind around programming, or would just not want to put in the time and effort. Moving on, we have a game called Boo Done It, which looks like you play as a ghost that controls other animals. They're calling it an adventure sandbox game where you play as a ghost to solve the mystery of their own murder. It's free to play, it's English only. I'm going to put this on the fall list, but then I probably will immediately take it off even if it is positively reviewed, because it's a free game. Doesn't look terrible though. Like, even if these are asset flips, there's a lot of polish and effort to make this look and feel like a unified environment. Okay, what do we want to do? Draw a card.
Life upon the land.
Mana,
That.
come forth. Luminescence, shining hope.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Sky Primal, which looks like it's just a resource survival game. Not a resource management game, just a survival game. $4.49. Nothing there of interest. Although being chased by a tiger is an interesting thought.
I live by the sword.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Double World Cave Song Castle, which that sounds like a direct translation from a Chinese title if I've ever heard one. And it does not look particularly good. Looks like it's a hack and slash game where you're playing as a Grim Reaper type character. And then you have this animation style that kind of just, I'd almost call that the high school animation style of somebody drawing with markers and just having no ability to do anatomical proportions or shading or anything else. There's no real stationary image of that. It's early access, it's 99 cents. It's English, Chinese, and Japanese, I would say. My guess is it's a Chinese game. Alright. That.
How much is in it for me?
And
This match is mine. I better get a bonus for
Take
this.
that!
see.
I earned my fair
That.
share.
Take that!
And that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Roadpunk. Actually, I need to stop covering the games that came out on Steam and just leave them for Friday, but there's really no reason to leave games for Friday. That just makes Friday super long. This is $1.79. It looks like nothing. It's just a asset flip racer. Here we have Gearbox Software saying, the Gearbox Entertainment Company accelerates growth plan with Embracer Group merger. And see, now they're calling it a merger, which I think is inaccurate. But see, I think the idea of being acquired and merged is just words mostly. Let's see, because it'll join Embracer Group as a wholly owned subsidiary of the Sweden-based company. So you have one that is based out of Texas, now being owned by Sweden. Which, if it's wholly owned, that means Randy Pitchford is out. There's literally no reason to keep him as an employee of Gearbox, even if he negotiated his contract there. And frankly, I don't know why Randy Pitchford would want to be at Gearbox anymore. Gearbox is a founder and employee-owned creator, which, how can it be employee-owned if it's now owned by Embracer Group? Did they all sell their interest and divest their interest? Or were they forced to divest their interest? Which, both of those might be the case. You really can't throw out both buzzwords. It can't be wholly owned by Embracer Group, which is, I believe, a publicly traded company, and be employee owned also. I'm not sure it ever actually was employee owned, though. I think that's a lie. Certainly. And almost certainly what this sets you up for is a lawsuit between Randy Pitchford and Embracer Group. Like, this merger is going to go through fighting tooth and nail unless Randy Pitchford has actually learned his lesson enough to get out and just take the money and run. Let's see. They now own 200 franchises and have 5,500 employees around the world.
How did I lose?
And I had forgotten that Gearbox made a second office in Quebec City. So, yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I don't think they own Brothers in Arms. I think that belongs to EA. Borderlands belongs to 2K. And then they worked on several other games they don't have the rights to. So they're very possibly going to have to work on a new first-person shooter. And I would also argue that there is never been a better time to potentially get out of the business of caring about Gearbox than now that it's been acquired. Here we can see Gearbox has confirmed that Randy Pitchford will continue his current role as head of Gearbox Entertainment. Pitchford accented the prioritization of Gearbox talent and its partners in the course of this transaction, and expressed his eagerness and excitement to maintain and increase the value of its relationship with the Gearbox team, Gearbox customer, and Gearbox allies. I think very quickly he's going to get told to retire or let go, but he doesn't want to do it, obviously. In the middle of the bad news, he'll wait a quarter until the stocks turn one way or the other, and then he'll sell. It would be interesting to know if he's getting cash for the purchase of Gearbox, or if he's getting a interest in Embracer Group, because if he gets stocks and shares of Embracer Group, that could be a real poison seal for Embracer Group if all of a sudden Randy Pitchford got promoted and he's in charge of all of Embracer Group.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Let's see. Juno Capital Partners and Union Square Advisors acted as M&A and financial advisors to Gearbox on the transition, and Fenwick and West acted as legal counsel. So at least they were using actual lawyers. Yeah. I don't see any way this isn't the end of Randy Pitchford in the video game world. And good riddance, frankly. If not, then we are in big trouble. Yeah. Wow, that would be quite the nightmare if Randy Pitchford somehow moved up the ladder in Embracer Group. At a certain level, I almost kind of enjoy the idea of another lawsuit and more drama happening around Randy Pitchford, because he's been fairly quiet, and getting back to the good old days of him being the go-to class clown is probably more interesting than the awful stories around some of the other companies, because at the very least, well, no, Randy Pitchford is just as bad as the rest of them, but at the very least he was funny. His stories were funnier.
Lightning storm.
Misery.
Mana, come forth.
Not a card that's immune to taking damage. And a character that can't be attacked. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Mighty Forest, which is just a polygonal game where you play as a wolf. Looks kind of asset flippy. 20 minutes long for $1.29 English Russian. That's not value.
Okay, that's
Here we have a game called Busons, which that's a weird word. I don't see anything here of interest. Seems like you're stuck in one place and then you shoot kind of like a top-down twin stick shooter. But $8.99 shared split screen player versus player, English or French. Yeah, I don't think there's a game there. Right. Do 1 damage. Spell boost, do 1 more. Do this.
Golly, it's chilly
Do
here.
this.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Evolve this.
this match is mine.
Now take a listen to this. Bop and roll.
Hit that.
Best of luck to you.
And doesn't matter, I'm gonna lose. See, next we have a game here called The Song of Star, which is tagged sexual content and nudity, and I didn't realize that, so let me just double check to make sure all the things are YouTube family friendly. Well, I guess it comes down to how do you feel about blinding white light at censorship. Well, anyways, this is actually a nice art style here, but I think this is an RPG Maker game that is going to be at least partially focused on this wizard who's seemingly implying she's not wearing any pants more than this cleavage girl, although they're both probably going to get some scenes. Here you can see blinding white light showing her bottom, but the actual game here is just a RPG Maker game as usual. It's not, it doesn't support English. It's $3.74. It's Chinese only with full audio. Interesting in a few ways because it's not Friday and yet we've got an adult game coming out. It's a Chinese game where the Chinese censorship has specifically been more consistent about saying no to adult content for the most part, or almost completely no adult content. And then the main character, she's not particularly being drawn as a fairly old looking character. Of course, animation style adjusts a lot of that, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they put her at 16, 17
Underestimate me.
and her maybe at 18, 19.
Come on.
So that is an interesting thought, but do I believe that's because that this is a change in what is allowed and what isn't allowed on Steam, or do I believe that Steam is just dropping the ball about looking at what actually gets listed on Steam and on their storefront? I think it's much more the latter, and that there's just nobody guarding the gates, as it were, gatekeeping as far as what's getting listed. Although clearly there has to be some level of gatekeeping happening, otherwise there would be just flash adult games getting listed on Steam left and right. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Hebroxia 2, which looks like it's just a side-scroll shoot-'em-up game, although it's half shoot-'em-up and half side-scrolling. Interesting. Interesting, a switch in perspective. $9.99 English and Japanese. Not really my style of game, but I will say this looks fine. I don't see anything here really bad.
I am Solomon, the first mate.
Trying to hurry here, but I've got so many tabs left. Here we have a game called Fall and Winter, which we may just need to stop playing after this game. This looks like a custom animated, so that's slightly more interesting roguelite. And an interesting art style here. It's kind of almost like a Nickelodeon or Disney art style. I don't even know how best to describe it. I probably should take, if I had time, I probably would have benefited from taking a animation history class from some expert somewhere so that I could actually name the artist who first established the style. But it probably doesn't matter either. This is $10.19, English only. I'm going to put this on the fall list. This might be good, might be bad. It is single player only, good. So yeah, that's
How's everyone doing?
something. There seems to be a curse will kill you in 10 minutes if you can't stop it, and you play, I think, as different characters each time. So it's like maybe not randomly generated, but you have a collection of characters that once they die, you have to go further. Which, if you have only 10 minutes and you can't get more than 10 minutes, that may not be a very long game. Moving on, we have a game that's all Asian characters. This looks like it's a beat 'em up, low effort kind of asset flip game. English is not supported. $4.99, Chinese only. We're still getting a massive amount of Chinese games.
I embrace all manner of spellcraft.
Mana, come forth.
Truth and taboo are that's one way of doing it.
Best of luck to you.
Let's see. Next, we have a game called Through Hell to Heaven. No spaces. This looks to me like it's an asset flip game. There are some art here and some concepts here that, with more polish, I feel like could work. But I just don't think there's a real game. Let's actually look at the trailer. We haven't had to look at a trailer for a game in quite a long time. Yeah, there's some visuals here, but then there's some stuff that's just not done, I think, well enough. This feels like it's a half-finished, like, visual project. It's early access, $6.99, third-party EULA. I'm gonna be generous and put it on the fall list just because I'd like to see if it gets any improvements, but there's not really a game there. Alright, and then next we have another game that's tagged with sexual content and nudity. So apparently they did decide to just open the floodgates today. So here we have a game called Muse Night Out, which to me seems to be half visual novel and half rock, paper, scissors and memory games. It seems like you have a collection of 6 big busted anime girls. I would say they're not animated particularly well. Yeah, you play rock, paper, scissors with them. It's early access. It's $2.39. It's English. It's Chinese. No Japanese in that one. At a certain level, it is fair to say, though, if you do just want to play an adult game to see some naked anime girls, you probably don't want to play that complicated of a game. So rock, paper, scissors is not inherently the wrong choice, in the same way that Honey Pop's match 3 elements weren't the wrong choice for that. But then you have to certainly ask the bigger question is, wouldn't you just get better animation if you just went and watched a video? I think you could just go to a porn site and see animated porn a lot easier than interacting with the video game in the first place. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's Let's Plays out there on some websites of adult games, so you don't have to play at all. The interactive element isn't really there if you're just playing playing something like rock, paper, scissors. Even Honey Pop doesn't really have an interactive element that matters. You pretty much eventually will grind your way to the scenes you want to see. Right, this, then this, and see. I don't know which one gets spell boosted better. Let's go with the middle one.
Just maybe this magic will help.
Do that. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Spider-Man Miles Morales has sold 4.1 million units in 2021. I mean 2020. Jeez, I'm getting that backwards. Here we have 1,001 jigsaw puzzles. Just really simplistic jigsaw puzzles for $2.99. Yeah, nothing there of interest. We already talked about this. Gamatsu has Embracer Group to merge with Easy Brain. Embracer Group calling all of these mergers. I think that's crazy. PlayStation 5, 4.5 million units sold. PS4 shipments top 115 million. So there's a big difference there, but then the PlayStation 4 has been out for a lot longer. Tech Raptor puts it as Embracer Group has acquired Gearbox software. So this is big news, certainly. Famitsu review scores for issue 1679 are out for the, I guess, digital sales or physical sales. Little Nightmares 2, new Star Manager, Super Mario 3D World, plus Bowser's Fury for the Switch, which is 36 out of 40, so pretty happy with that, but still not giving it top marks. Summon a Medusa instead. Let's kill this first. And then this here.
Let's get the icing on this cake.
And then hit that.
Feel the emptiness.
And then hit that. And this can just keep on attacking over and over again.
Feel me grasp the sheer boom of infinity.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Asian Riddles 4, which they are pictocrosses, not riddles. It'd be pretty much impossible to do an Asian riddle in English. $2.99. I don't even know if Chinese or Japanese really have that many riddles. Moving on, Gamatsu has Nippon Ichi Software announcing a detective simulation adventure called Tante Boku Metsu. Yeah, Boku Metsu for the PS4 and Switch, which seems like it might be some creepy looking game, with which most mystery detective games are slightly creepy.
Whoa, bud, cut the rough stuff.
Gamatsu also has Embracer Group to acquire Aspire Media. And Embracer Group to merge with Gearbox Entertainment. Which definitely they probably negotiated that it was called a merger on one side and then the acquisition otherwise. Can I evolve this? So the turn evolved as followers. So let's not do that. Finish all cards. Spell boost.
This is your fate.
Okay.
Light for all the world.
Yep. I'm about to lose. This is going to be the last game I play. Gamatsu has an article. Atelier Mysterious Trilogy Deluxe Pack announced for the PS4, Switch, and PC. It includes Atelier Fierce DX, Atelier Sophie DX, and Atelier Liddy and Sueli DX. Which these three games I believe are on Switch, but they are kind of the side games and smaller, and they were not priced at a side games and smaller price, so bundling them is a smart move. Apparently there's also going to be some new content. All three titles will include a photo mode, digital art book, and double speed battle mode, which that will definitely make it a better idea, certainly to play the games faster, JRPGs faster. In fact, that might be a very easy rule to implement for me if I am going to get into JRPGs, is to say I just refuse to play any games that don't have a double speed battle mode. Although I don't feel like I could really get away with making that claim. Right. Destroy an enemy. Summon a paper Shinigami. Or deal 4 damage to a follower.
I watch over the course of history for the sake of the future.
Blinding light.
If I could get this on the field and get it actually attacking, that would be cool. So I'm gonna have to make sure to remove the Atelier 3 games from my wish list. You don't really run into that scenario, but it does occasionally happen.
But make it fashion.
At the risk of coming off misunderstood, I'm gonna mention here B4 G4, which was just G4 before they announced they were falling behind and delayed, has decided to celebrate and honor Black History Month. Nothing wrong with that in my book, but they certainly open up themselves to the idea of why are they working on this instead of making G4. I could see a lot of twitchy people who just want to see new G4 being like, why are you gonna focus on this? I could see you could make the argument that it's SJW, particularly since they probably will only highlight Black History Month and not any of the other months, unless there's a minority or SJW reason to highlight that. They're highlighting this person who I don't recognize. See, what is this? She's a TTRPG creator. She created Into the Motherlands, an original RPG funded by Twitch with a team of people of color designers. Never heard of her. Never heard of the game. I mean, you that is sadly probably the closest stretch you're gonna get, though. That there aren't a lot of people of color that have been in positions of power in the video game world, and that's something that should be addressed, certainly. But also, should G4 be doing this? Because G4 has been, what G4 was a bunch of, let's just face it, white frat bro people, California people, white California kids mostly, making content for other mostly white frat bro characters. Like G4 was hardly trying to target originally any people of color, and I think they are definitely going to go in the right direction and try to do more of that when they actually make content, but they should just be making content. And I think that's the message that they're going to get or should get. But you have to certainly say it delicately, because you open yourself up to being accused of racism the second you say anything. But yeah, it's like, hey G4, we want you just to be focused on the games. It gets right back down to the whole Gamergate concept, and where that movement, I think, finally settled before it mostly just dissolved into smoke, was we just want people to talk about video games. We don't want to see G4 just become another Kotaku and Polygon, and this is definitely a sign that it might just be another Kotaku and Polygon, and that's going to be really, really frustrating. Moving on, we have the Tech Raptor February 2021 Xbox Games Pass lineup, which has Wolfenstein Youngbloods and Jurassic Park Evolution. This graphic is really blurry. The Falconer, Final Fantasy 12, Ghost of a Tale, Stealth something 2, a game of clones. I don't even know what that's called. Stealth NPC. There's something here, but I can't read it. And then Project Winter. I guess we could just go down here. Falconer is a relatively recent game, if it's the one I'm thinking of. Jurassic Park Evolution, I think, is a just simulator. Stealth Incorporated 2. Youngbloods was not amazingly well received as a game, and like so many other games, it really just cannot get enough polish on it to make it something more than it was. Here we have an article from Tech Raptor getting a running start on Lunark, which sounds like a way to mispronounce Link, but I guess not. I guess it's the game that's coming out. It doesn't look particularly interesting to me at the moment. Apparently, Stonk being the Reddit way from Wall Street Bets of saying stocks. Apparently, those shirts are going to be sold by Game. I believe Game is the UK name for GameStop, though. I think it's the same parent company. Although maybe GameStop in the United States is owned by a different company than Game. So, GameStonk to the moon. So they're cashing in on that. Again, this might very well be a case where the UK offices or the sister company to GameStop can say something and do something, whereas right now GameStop itself is just trying to bury its head and avoid any accusations of market manipulation. Which, okay. I wouldn't be surprised if they just never mention the Wall Street Bets at all. Gamatsu has a roguelike deck builder called Roguebook, launching June 24th for PC, later for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Which, yep, nothing there. Here we have a review for a game called Sarawak, which looks like it's probably a mostly text game. If I recall correctly, this was like a text-based game with just a lot of animation on it to look nice. They gave it a 7.5. I guess we're seeing just new staff writers all over the place for Tech Raptor. Sarawak is an interesting story that sells itself too short, with interesting gameplay and intriguing premise, but ultimately not enough exposition. Prose, beautiful minimalistic art style, interesting premise, Colin's short runtime, rushes mystery, and shallow characters. Okay, we've got about 15 more tabs. Let's go through them as quickly as possible. Here we have a game called The Door in the Basement, which looks like it's a horror game. It's probably an asset flip game, but there's kind of enough variety here. But what I'm not seeing is any kind of user interface or items or weapons. So is this just straight up a walking simulator? And can a walking simulator / puzzle game really work? Okay, I just don't see anything chasing you. Or, yeah, a blurry, pixely image. It's coming out to be announced, English for Melania. So I guess I don't even have to decide right now, but yeah, that's not good looking. Needs a higher resolution. Here we have a game called Lost Words Beyond the Page. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm starting to get notifications of games that aren't out yet, but this is another one. English Full On You. This one actually does look like it might be something, but I don't know. I don't know how much of a game and how much of a platformer it is. It seems to be somewhat of a platformer. I'll put it on the follow list even though it doesn't even have a release date. And yeah, Gamma Sutra, the same article. Borderlands developer Gearbox acquired by Embracer Group in $1.38 billion deal. That's a great example of using a headline to push the biggest number you can find. Next we have Hajj VR, which we've seen one of these before, and now it seems like we're seeing some competition. I imagine we probably are not too far from, is it Ramadan? When they have to visit Mecca, or is there a specific time when you're supposed to visit Mecca, and do the pilgrimage? I'm not quite familiar. This looks exactly like the other game, so I don't know why it's being once again released. $9.59, English, French, and Arabic, but oddly not on my follow list. So it has been delisted and then relisted, which is weird, or it's been listed twice by two different companies. In this one, it does seem like there are actually more temples too than just Mecca that you can visit and wander around. And like I said last time, this might be a very educational, safe way to see some of these buildings. I just wish the buildings looked better and were better designed. Could also just be a scheme to get $10 out of people. I still doubt that we were I doubt very many Islam clerics would claim that you've done a pilgrimage if you did it in VR, but maybe they are letting that slide these days. Here we have a CNN health article, which we don't get much of our news from CNN for several good reasons. Video games help children improve literacy, communication, and mental well-being, survey finds. I believe this was probably the same survey that was highlighted by the ESRB, but apparently it was a UK survey in the first. After having seen all of the Wall Street bets and the effect that had on the stock market, I would not be surprised if CNN on TV tries to be a little bit nicer to video games and realize that that is potentially going to be their next audience, if they're going to have an audience as older viewers die out. But also, I would not be surprised one bit if CNN.com and the website has just a very different narrative voice than what is shown on the TV channel. And I wouldn't be surprised if the TV channel still, on occasion, does what so many other video news sites do, which is to try to blame anything and everything on video games. I could easily make a bet that before the 4-year term of Biden ends, there will be at least some major push or medium push, at least. Heck, I'll even say maybe it will just be a minor push to blame video games or ban video games, or censor video games, because that's something that the Democrats tend to kind of try to push, and their cancel culture is in full swing at the moment, so I could see that. Here is 2K's tweet from 4 hours ago. As the proud publisher, and they're starting this going, we are the publisher of Borderlands franchise. We're happy for our partners at Gearbox. We look forward to continuing a long-term partnership with this incredibly talented team, delivering many more exciting entertainment experiences to gaming fans around the world. So they're not going to immediately say the thing that may very well happen is that Gearbox may not be the company making Borderlands 4, which we assume there is a Borderlands 4 in development. And then they're still releasing content also, so a director's cut reveal will happen on February 10th. Director's cut add-on during the Borderlands show on February 10th, which they've got a whole show that they've been doing. Yep. I really wouldn't be surprised if what happens is Borderlands 4 gets developed about halfway and then they hand over half of the development or a half-finished game to a different company. I guess the real question is, does 2K have another company that they can trust and would want to work on one of their biggest AAA titles, or are they willing just to keep on working with Gearbox? Honestly, 2K might be more than happy to work with Gearbox if Randy Pitchford disappears from the scene, which that might be the solution in a nutshell. But at a certain point, I think 2K will have to look at Embracer Group as a competitor, not a partner. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Bloodline, which looks like it's a low polygon hack and slash game. Let's see, it's coming soon. It doesn't look interesting at all. About 5 more. Here we have a Tech Raptor article. HROT is a feverish Slavic shooter, which looks too pixely for my taste. So I'm gonna skip that since I have no interest in it. Then they have a opinion piece, I suppose, here from Rion Bevin, which was the one that did the visual novel earlier. What Fallout the Frontier could learn from New Vegas writing abuse survivors. Let's see. Apparently there's a prompt here. If you have speech 100, I promise we'll stay together, but now you're gonna be my little slave girl. Put this collar on. I'm sorry, I was just messing with you. Then here we have a trigger warning at the beginning for sexual assault and pedophilia. I don't know if this last New Frontier is some mod somebody made. Let's see. Fallout the Frontier was released last month after a highly anticipated 7-year development. This mod is a passion project of a group of New Vegas enthusiasts and adds 3 entirely new campaigns as well as new characters and factions. And yet in just a week, the holy grail of the New Vegas community has been scorned, receiving praise for impressive task of adding so many new characters. Many criticized some of the writing, which was much more sexually charged than the vanilla game. Well, isn't that pretty much every single mod for every single game? So yeah, we may have a problem here with Rihanna Bavin, like as a staff writer with Tech Raptor. If she's gonna potentially be allowed to turn Tech Raptor into a polygon, that might be a problem. Now, I'm not reading this full article, so maybe she's fully justified, and maybe this Frontier mod is really just a rape mod and a sexual assault mod and a slave girl mod, like so many other adult mods are. And maybe it was poorly advertised as that, but also this very well may be a case of finding something to be upset about. So now I'm certainly on edge, and I will have to see how the writer goes one way or the other. It's not the first time where we've seen a mainstream video game Western critic, even though she's from the UK, that's still Western compared to the Asian countries. It's not the first time where we've seen them praise or play Western visual novels like the one she covered, and then also still be a flaming SJW and not really even begin to cover any of the Eastern games or look from an Eastern perspective or look from an adult perspective that maybe some people do want to play adult games that have controversial topics that would be controversial if done in the real world, but aren't so controversial if explored in stories. There is this consistent fear and thought and stupidity that is repeated, that people shouldn't be able to explore thoughts that are negative or explore stories that are negative because that is going to make them act on those thoughts, which that's just insanity. It's just a pro-censorship argument, and I feel like if Tech Raptor allows one of their staff writers to push a pro-censorship argument, then that's just another news source that I'm gonna stop listening to. Which then I guess that would make my streams a lot shorter if I wasn't following Tech Raptor articles anymore. Anyways, moving on, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. A pigeon simulator allows you to rain poop and cause mayhem. So yeah, that's a fairly neck-breaking shift, theme shift there. As far as this pigeon simulator, is it made by a company that I know, or like, is it from the same company that made well, I know Tiny Big. Yeah, it's definitely trying to feel like a goat simulator game, and it does definitely feel like it plays like a goat simulator game. There might be something for a joke game like this, but it also might be a game that's just too expensive for what it's really worth. See, next we have a game on Steam called Dark Flower, which is tagged as an RPG puzzle platformer casual clicker, which that is all over the place. I would say it's probably a RPG Maker game with some dark screenshots on top of it. English is not supported, 59 cents, Chinese only. Yeah, that doesn't look like anything of interest. Next we have Riddle of the Sphinx, the Awakening Edition, which is tagged as an adventure puzzle educational game. There might be something to this. $39.99 now? Yeah, right. Plus another $29.97? Yeah, you're not going to convince me on that price tag. You just lost a sale. Not even going to put that on the follow list at that ridiculously high price. Then we have Open Critic here. Chris Tales will launch in July, which is a time-traveling RPG apparently, that pits players in multiple timelines at once. Interesting. We've got just a video, but the video is incredibly small. Why is the video incredibly small? I don't know. Well, we'll move forward from that. id Software was 30 years old a few days ago, I believe. And so they put out one of these images thanking everybody, which more of these images with text on them I see, the more I realize that Instagram is the big deal nowadays and Twitter is not, which I think that's fairly obvious. Here we have a game called Journey of Life, which looks like it's probably just an asset flip survival game. It's already mixed reviewed, $13.49, English, allegedly full audio. And then we have a game called Laonza the Bounty Hunter, which interesting to have a unique name behind it. Looks like it's just a side-scrolling shooter, bullet hell, kind of like an Asteroids clone, I think, more than a side-scrolling shooter. $4.99. It's just not visually interesting enough for me, though. And then that brings me to the Humble Bundle. Let's see if there's any new Humble Bundles. I bet the answer is no. Yes. The answer is no. And then let me just reload my Twitter feed and see if there's any more news, and then we can end this 3-hour-long stream. Feel like there probably was some bit of news. Let's see. Susan Wojcicki is retweeting someone that doesn't seem like they're a YouTuber, and she's like retweeting someone else that doesn't seem like they're a YouTuber. Let's see. YouTube Gaming still is clueless by the looks of it as far as trying to get anybody's attention as a Twitter feed. I probably could mute YouTube Gaming anyways. Apparently the legendary edition of Mass Effect looks different than the original games, which, like, no surprise there. It should look better. It should be undoubtedly better. It's still fairly annoying as a small YouTuber that they've added increasingly more shorts and posts as functions, trying to change YouTube into this Instagram/social media site, but then they've also eliminated the ability for any small YouTuber to use those functions, so that they're just making it ever increasingly more difficult to use something if you think it is something that would work well with your channel, to grow your channel. Thus your channel probably won't grow as easily as the bigger channels, which is what they want. They want the big channels to succeed and everybody else to just F off effectively. At least that's what it feels like. And honestly, I don't think I would use posts or shorts much, if at all anyways. I don't really see how that helps my channel, and I'm not sure that people really like them as features, even though they're being shoved in people's faces. I'm still scrolling down my Twitter feed to see. There's a lot of tweets, but it's mostly stuff we already talked about. Getting retweets a lot and reposts. Alright, yep. So seemingly there is no new news worth mentioning. Where's that. So that's going to be it for the stream. We're still having no problem with the network as far as my computer. So it definitely does feel like it's just a Wi-Fi issue, and I'm slowly fixing the Wi-Fi issue or trying to fix it. That's it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.